share screen here. And let me get the report up. Okay, so I hope you're seeing the report now. So this report in 2008 had an explicit section to show you how its coding worked. They used India as the example. Going to the U.S. Committee on Religious USCIRF report, they pulled out these examples of government intolerance towards religious groups. Okay, now my favorite one is down here, an incident in which a minor woman eloped with, Hindu female minor eloped with a Muslim man, underage marriage. And this was used as an example of repression of religion, that she was, that he was charged with kidnapping a underage girl for marrying her. I mean, when you actually get down to the data, these are often ridiculous. Again, people being arrested, 3 pastors arrested. Okay, now that sounds bad. For making derogatory remarks against Hindu gods. Well, that's illegal in India. Now, maybe it shouldn't be illegal. I mean, we as Americans make derogatory remarks about gods all the time, but you can't criticize anyone's gods in India. People were arrested for making derogatory remarks about gods. Well, against the law, they were arrested. Now, none of these reports suggest any serious violence, any serious incidents, yet these incidents have been reported as, so here again, missionaries were arrested and released on bail the next day. Now, we can agree or disagree with these individual incidents, but when an organization is going to a country of 1.4 billion people looking for the worst incidents of religious repression to feature in a report, and the worst they can come up with is people who insulted a god illegally were arrested and then released the next day, I shrug my shoulders and I say they're fishing for ways to, they're looking for ways they can say something negative. They're not making an objective assessment. And to put this in context, my mother is a very devout Christian. She supports Christian missionaries in Somalia. She told me herself that they are not allowed to actually use the word Jesus. They can carry on their relief work, helping poor people in Somalia. But if they even utter the word Jesus, they'll be deported. Yet India ranks worse than Somalia, on hostility to religion. And so it's this kind of thing that, when you see it over and over and over again, you just get weary of, and you kind of say, yes, it's the usual suspects. But what we have to do is educate people who don't follow these things closely. Because your average reporter for the Sydney Morning Herald doesn't know anything about this. There's an independent U.S. organization that produces a report. The Pew Research Center, the most prestigious survey research organization in the world, produces a report. Why wouldn't you trust it, right? And so unless you're educated as to, no, this is all just recycled propaganda, unfortunately, it enters into the public record and becomes the common wisdom.
Yeah. Now, just following on from there, Jay, I'll get you in as well, which is a question for all 3 of you. That there is this problem with how the data is presented, and obviously for people who have studied data or are into statistics, they can pretty much clearly see even prima facie what's wrong here. But there's this another problem, of you could say alleged problem, that there is a lot of picking and choosing going on as to what data you want to publish. We see this with Elon Musk releasing this information about alleged suppression of a report regarding Hunter Biden's computer. So the point is that is it reached a stage now where there is this problem of how the data is analyzed, but there's also this problem of purposely suppressing one kind of information because you want to propagate a certain narrative. So I'll come first to you, Jay, and then I'll go to Amit and Salvatore.
See, I just wanted to add only one point. Now, when we have understood how the information or data is being recycled, what is the way to dismantle it, or to have a counter fact-based report or something like that, which could certainly give us standing in front of maybe a Sydney Morning Herald's reporter or Sun's reporter in UK or any other reporter globally. So how do we get it done? That's my point. Now we have last few months we have been talking. We have understood this fact, but how to dismantle their jargons, their all recycling of the issues? How do we do that? Do we need another set of institution? Do we need another set of people who could work on these issues? How do we do it?
Yeah, Amit, I also want to come to you because the thing is that, we often use this term, or rather people often use this term left liberal. And I always, as you know, even in our private discussions, I say that no, that these are not liberals, they're pseudo liberals. I mean, that's why I classify myself as a liberal. So the point being that how do we reclaim words like liberal and progressive, and how do we challenge people who are doing this, because they seem to be in powerful positions, and anybody who challenges them is then given, is labeled. I mean, we have faced bullying and harassment online. So how do we move forward on this? And then I'll come to you, Salvatore.
That I completely agree with you, Pallavi, that when I was studying in India, doing my masters and everything, I kind of believed in these categories as these compartments as very strict compartments, and people cannot move. And as I've moved to 3-4 countries, I've worked in Fiji, Canada, and lived in US and here Australia, I kind of believe that these compartments have been selectively created to keep tell people their position, particularly by the left. So what we consider to be right may not be right, conservative right, say, compared to US or Canada or India, kind of right. So one of the examples is, if you look at BJP's manifesto, it appears to be very left socialist, right? So and if you look at the kind of actions that the so-called left has taken in India, it is very dictatorial in terms of, if you look at Bengal 30 years, Kerala 30 years, the kind of actions that they have taken, I won't call them left at any given point of time, because you see a particular narrative being branded. So I agree with Salvatore that you have to fight based on facts. You have to educate more people. You have to give room within the classroom, sociology, anthropology, literature, soft humanities classrooms as well. And you have to bring in people with scientific bent of mind, particularly from countries like India, to challenge the statistics and data. If Pew Research, we have cited Pew Research in some of our articles, particularly related to Hindus in America and Indians in America. And for example, if a journalist so I would say, we have a clear category where you have taking facts before Salvatore came on the picture and now post Salvatore. People have now started questioning very facts, because I would have just seen USCIRF, independent body, maybe their research is true, right? Unless someone comes to and educates me, no, this is the politics behind this appointments. And that's why I asked that particular question to Salvatore. Please educate us on what this body represents itself. And a very good, just as an aside, because you mentioned Pakistan, and I think Salvatore also mentioned Pakistan at one point of time. If you look at Afghanistan, Pakistan, and US, when they were working closely, and some other academics have pointed out, Pakistan origin American scholars were selectively put in certain organizations by Pakistan-sponsored government and institutions to push Pakistani agenda, particularly towards Afghanistan. And I'm not making this up. You can Google it. The last 2 years, these scholars were called out by their American counterparts. They said that during meetings, they didn't listen. They just kept pushing their agenda until the time it became frustrating and one of the parties gave up. And the usual case was that people who are pro-dialogue usually give up because they don't want to fight at any point of time. So they leave the room. They say, I'm going to vote no for this, or I'm going to abstain from voting on this. And finally, the agenda wins. So I think fighting on facts educating and bringing more people who have statistics and scientific bent of mind is the question. Because once you start the shouting game, it is a win situation for the other party. So that's one of the things I would like to point out.
Yeah, and Salvatore, like there's a famous saying, right, that numbers don't lie. Like data doesn't lie. I mean, in that sense. So I would like to bring you in here that like we know about the data that Elon Musk has released recently. Now there is one thing that you have mentioned several times, that it's so-called Indian intellectuals who have been kind of part of pushing this narrative. But do you reckon that, say, people in the New York Times, the Washington Post, or academics, do you reckon that they are completely not aware of facts on the ground, that there is that it's mostly based on these people pushing this narrative? Because as one is evident, that there is this cherry picking of data as well, even when it's in front of you. And what can be really done to challenge this? Is the way forward to engage in more dialogue? Should the government of India bring out data based on statistics and provide it to these people? What can be done going forward?
Well, Pallavi, you say facts don't lie. Someone else says there are lies, damn lies, in statistics. So we can see it either way. Look, the India's problem here is different from the political battle going on in the U.S. So, for example, with the Twitter files release, not a single major U.S. television network or mainline newspaper, Washington Post, New York Times, not a single one of them has even acknowledged that the dump of data exists. And they're not acknowledging it because very consciously they're fighting a political battle in American politics. But India is not a political battle in American politics. India is so low down the priority list that people can influence perceptions of India for their own purposes with just a little bit of effort here and there. The typical New York Times, Washington Post reporter is very aware of what's going on at Twitter and very aware of US politics. That person has virtually no knowledge what's happening in India. And you say they have no knowledge of the facts on the ground. How do we know the facts on the ground? We know the facts on the ground by going to trusted, independent sources of information, whether that's Amnesty International, USCIRF, Pew Research Center, Varieties of Democracy Institute. That's how we know what the facts on the ground are. It's very meta world. I mean, I know what the experience is of a poor Muslim in India. I only know by reading these supposedly independent reports. And that's true of an editor at the New York Times or an editor at the Wall Street Journal as well. Now, when they see that all of these line up telling a single narrative, when the supposedly independent USCIRF tells you that India is the worst country in the world for religious liberty, and the State Department politically blocks reporting on that, well, it sounds like a slam dunk case. Obviously, India is terrible. It's become a fascist state, and people in the US government are protecting India. Now, that narrative is completely wrong, but I don't blame the reporter or the editor at the New York Times, the Washington Post, at ABC, NBC, CBS for falling for that narrative. Because that narrative is being presented to them. I mean, the person who is literally writing the Pew Research Center report on religious freedom in India, okay, I don't know her personal story, but she has an Indian name. She probably knows India very well. She must know that the picture she's painting, while it serves her own view of politics in India, I assume. Again, I don't know. I'm assuming a lot just from a name. All I have is the name. It's serving a political agenda, but she must be aware that India is not, however bad she may think India is, she must be aware that it's not as bad as being the worst country in the world for someone to have a minority religion. So if she is producing a report that says that, and the report's based on Pew's own research. Now, Pew, I want to be clear, is the world's best, hands down, survey research organization. But this is not part of their survey research. This is an expert report they're producing from their own staff. Okay. Well, if their own staff is using USCIRF data unquestioningly to support a narrative, why shouldn't the problem is that is their staff members who are Indian of Indian origin, have Indian names. I mean, again, I can't know where she was born. I don't know what her religion is, but a person of Indian origin is producing that report. Now, again, if I'm the New York Times, a person of Indian origin working at the world's most prestigious research organization is telling me that India has the worst religious freedom in the world. Why wouldn't the New York Times believe that?
Yeah, Jay.
That's the issue. The issue is the Indians, the Indians on one side who want to support this narrative, and the Islamists on the other side who are peddling this narrative. They're the problem. Don't blame the New York Times for simply reporting what everybody is telling them.
Yeah, Jay, I would like to get you in here because Salvatore has made this point. But as a reporter, as an academic, perhaps this is excusable, even though, a country of 1.4 billion to just go by what, 5 or 10 people are saying may sound preposterous. But say as a journalist, like if one is sent to a country to report on the ground, normally they are supposed to do their own investigation. But we have heard this, that basically when foreign journalists come to India, they are open-minded. But when they interact with the local journalists there, they are fed into a particular narrative, and then the story begins from there. So what is your take on that, being a senior journalist?
Okay, so Pallavi, I have worked in like 4 different countries other than Australia. So what happens is, if I'm supposed to be posted in UK or Tokyo or Singapore or per se in India, so what do I do? From today onwards, when I received a letter from my boss, Amit Sawal, I'll ask, boss, do you have any contacts in India? So what will he tell me? Oh, these are a number of people with whom we have interviewed in last 1 year. So who are those people? They are the exactly same people which Salvatore is talking about, that who have appeared on TV in last 1 year, or who have written a op-ed in one of the newspapers in that country where I am from, and I will contact them. Then through those people, I will go and ask who are the reporters I should be friends with in India. If I'm in Delhi, I'll be going to the Foreign Press Club there. I'm a member of that. Okay, so who will I meet? Then again, I'll meet Rana Ayub. I'll probably meet Bakadat. I'll meet Salvatore's best friend there. My previous boss, Rajdeep Sardesai. So what will they feed us? Assume I don't know anything about India. What will they feed me? And when I'll talk to them as reporters do, as we do, I'll ask, oh, I'm going to do a story on growth of India. They'll tell me, what are you talking? There is no growth. People are dying. People are hungry. You should be doing this report. If you want contact, I'll give you contact. So what kind of report ABC journalists will be producing? Imagine that. This is the cycle which happens. And sometimes they end up talking to Pallavi Jain. She'll be telling the growth stories. Then that cycle of what aboutry comes. In a story of 900 words, there'll be one paragraph with 3 lines saying, however, India is growing by 6.9% per year. So I will claim I have put all the sides, I have also talked about India is growing by the highest percentile in the world. No other country is growing by 6.9% per year GDP. So it's okay. But you know what? They are miserable people. They suppress minorities. They are castes. They are Hindutva people. Everything bad is happening. But, they are growing by 7.8%. This is how whole journalistic circle works. This is the gist of it.
Yeah, I will take final, probably concluding comments from everyone. But Salvatore, your report that came out initially, absolutely data-based, solid on facts. Do you think that's the way to go forward? That talk about facts, because that's the only way to challenge fake narratives and maybe create more awareness, as much awareness as each one of us who values truth at the end of the day can do.
Look, there's no substitute for just doing the hard work. To piggyback on what's just been said, even so sophisticated a journalist as Shekhar Gupta fell for the independent outside panel narrative. And now you can love or hate Shekhar Gupta, say what you want, but Shekhar has consistently criticized negative international rankings of Indian democracy. He republished my report on the print, the only Indian news outlet that republished my report in full. He's been very sympathetic to the message I was promoting. Yet he did a cut the clutter, saying, "Well, Salvatore's report says this, but an entirely independent ranking just came out, Cato Institute. They say the opposite. They say that in fact Indian democracy is having problems. So we can't just blame leftists. After all, Cato Institute is a right-wing think tank." Even Shekhar Gupta fell for it, not realizing that Cato Institute just got its data from the Rise of Democracy Institute, which was the very organization that I criticized in my report. Now, if even someone as sophisticated, as sympathetic, and someone with such a deep knowledge of India, I mean, again, you may not like him, but no one's going to say Shekhar Gupta does not have a deep knowledge of India. If even he falls for this is an independent narrative from an independent think tank, what are you going to do? Right? You can't expect an ordinary Western journalist not to fall from it. All you can do is continue to promote a factual narrative and push to get that narrative out.
Yeah. Amit, your concluding comments, because there is also this discussion that in the Indian context is left, right, liberal, conservative. It's really not workable, because Indian society is very ancient, very complex and things like that. But just your concluding comments on everything that's happened.
So my concluding comments are that one thing that Indians should be encouraged to do is every Indian, I think I'm not just talking about Indian intellectuals, journalists, or people who have college education, but each individual Indian has the right to question any form of report that comes either from within India or outside India, especially outside India, challenge. And there should be some way that Indians should be able to contribute directly to these reports, because if they are cherry picking or selecting reports from within India which are published by vested interest, then there is no point of being independence, right? Being independent means that you are going directly to the sources, you are cross-checking facts, and then producing a report that can make or break a country's reputation. So this is not just US Commission's report that will, as Salvatore pointed out, that it has no impact on US politics, the internal politics, but it has major repercussions for India on global platforms, because these reports would be read by n number of countries and other scholars from different countries. So for example, someone reading in Africa would have the same ideas about India, and he or she doesn't know anything about India. They would read USCIRF report and they will say, oh, here we go, this country is not to be trusted entirely, especially South Korea or any other place. So one of the things is that these bodies should be transparent, they should have, especially they should have a wide variety of people representing variety of faiths as well as variety of ideologies, right? We do not want a think tank where people are not allowed to think. So that kind of demolishes the very purpose. People should think, people should question, people should ask questions, people should revise their reports. So USCIRF, if publishes a wrong report and people point out, people like Salvatore and even Shekhar Gupta or anyone else points out, or Jay Bharadwaj, they should revise their report and say, sorry, we did this wrong, we are removing this part and we are adding this, right? And there should be no political compulsions. I'm all for political, ideological freedom. And therefore, there should be no compulsion on any commission or any independent body to write a particular political narrative to suit a political ideology or a chaotic ideology. But they should do so with full transparency.
Yeah. Jay, your thoughts?
See, the action is required. Now, what Salvatore is saying and what I have understood, and probably what Amit had just said is a utopia world where everything will be perfect. That's a kind of not possible, at least in near 50, 100 years. Maybe, I don't know, after that what happens. But if you want to fight this game, if you want to play this game, then there are rules on the table. Learn how to play it better than the opponent. And as Salvatore has already told, that if you want your people in the USCIRF, get them there. Get your reports, your information there, which could be included in these reports. And probably we'll not be doing this debate. Other side will be doing the report that USCIRF report is saying India is doing so well. So if you want to play this game and kind of win this game and put forward what you think should be there, then you have to kind of prepare your people, back up the person with most knowledge wins. So if people like Salvatore, people like Amit Sawal can be backed up with those kind of resources to put forward reports and research in these institutions, then that's the solution. I don't see any other way of doing it other than playing by the rules which are already on the table. Pallavi.
Yeah, and my concluding remarks would be that one of the reasons why India doesn't do this is because India is a secular democracy. It works on principles and ethics in the international relations, and that's why it has got immense soft power. And also, I would say that my personal opinion would be that these reports are not just inimical to India. I think that in the long run, they are actually dangerous and inimical to the countries, where they are based. That would be my concluding thoughts, that this is not just something for India to think. This is something that even people in America who love their country, or if such reports are coming out in other countries, I think that at the end of the day, in the long run, they could potentially be harmful for those countries as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Salvatore, for joining us today, and also for always putting things in such an articulate fashion. Thank you, Dr. Amit Sarbal, and thank you, Jidad Bharadwaj, for the conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you.